Good afternoon. I now call the June 18, 2020 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 2 o'clock p.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I'll now ask the School Board Attorney to explain the rules for this board meeting.
This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meeting and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comments regarding any work session item today listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular item, the secretary will call the speaker's name in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last name. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you.
We will now begin the work session with the Superintendent's Administrative Briefing.
Thank you, Chair Cummings. We have some timely updates for the board, and before we start that, though, Officer Paz, thanks for being with us today. I want to say thank you. And Mr. McAteer is going to start off. I'm so excited with what he's going to share.
Good afternoon, Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Thrower, members of the board, Ms. Green, and Ms. Lopez, as well as Dr. Mayer. I'm excited to be here to talk about the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative, which is something that we will be participating in Marion County. On January 27th, Governor DeSantis announced a $5 million grant from the Marcus Foundation to enrich civic literacy in K-12 schools through speech and debate programs. The Department of Education has created the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative, which is designed to promote critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration skills across the state by increasing students' access, and that's the important word, access to competitive speech and debate teams. So I received this information, Dr. Mayer received this information, Ms. Barber, our our 612 Social Studies Program Specialist received this information, and we thought it was a no-brainer to try to get involved if we were allowed to. So there was a rigorous application process with the state. 60 schools in the state were chosen from throughout the state of Florida, and I'm proud to say that Westport High School and Liberty Middle School were chosen to participate, and I think it's a fantastic thing for our students. They're going to furnish training from that $5 million grant for our teachers. They're going to furnish materials, and it's just a really good way, especially in today's times, for our students to get involved in civics and the debate process and learn the way to be able to work with their peers through different issues and be able to critically think about how to address the problems in our society. So I think it's really, really, really a positive thing, and I'm excited. Those two schools were definitely ones that we wanted to address because they're our two largest, middle school and high school. They had the personnel to be able to do that. We've chosen one teacher. That's what the state only would allow us to choose one teacher, Spencer Reeder at Westport High School and Clifford Wyrick at Liberty Middle. Both of them have a background in debate, but they're not versed in the civic debate as much. So it's one of these things where they're going to hopefully be leaders in our districts for our other schools to be able to increase this in all of our schools. I know that Governor DeSantis' wish is in the next 3 years for this to be in every county in the state. So we're extremely excited about that, and we look forward to giving you updates in the future as we get more details from DOE and we move through the process. And then one last note before I leave you. On the original agenda, you had bell times from me, and last year I stood in front of you at about the same time and said that I was going to come back in July and talk to you about bell times because school grades weren't out and the bottom 300, it was kind of fruitless to do it and then come back again. This year, unfortunately, for different reasons, because of the pandemic, and we're working through the task force and trying to figuring out how to reopen our schools, it would make more sense for me to again come back in July after the task force has some recommendations to give so we kind of know what our bell times were. I will tell you, looking at them in the preliminary stages, there weren't many changes that were requested by transportation or school, but I'll share that information with you in July.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Boston from Title I, and Ms. Beck from Elementary Ed have an update for you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Board Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Ms. Thrower, board members, Superintendent Mayor, Attorney Green, Ms. Martinez Lopez. So a few weeks ago, I came before you all to share an opportunity for our students to bring them back to school on a small scale in the format of a soft reopening. And I spoke to you, and you all were agreeable to that. So we've been planning and moving forward with that opportunity. So I spoke to you at that time about the 21st Century Program and also funds that were available through our Title I. And since that time, we have participated, a number of us have participated in a few webinars, and based on guidance from the governor and Florida DOE, we have information to very strongly support our idea to move forward with this soft opening. And so today what we're going to do is share with you the plan for our 21st Century Schools. We have, no, I'm looking for the, oh, I'm clicking, okay. Sorry. So today we're going to talk about our 21st Century Schools program, a summer recovery program, Liftoff 2020. The focus of those programs is going to be on academics and socialization while preparing for a full opening in the fall. We're going to speak to you about transportation and food service and our campus health and safety guidelines. And this information that we're presenting to you from this particular slide can be referenced in that FLDOE Reopening Florida Schools page, document 40, page 42. So, our 21st Century program will address 10 schools, 5 elementary, 5 middle. It's scheduled to occur July 13th through 30th, Monday through Friday for 6 hours from 8 until 2. Again, this program, the 21st Century program, is designed to support student learning. So they will engage in activities, hands-on activities that will reinforce and support our reading and math skills. It's engagement activities. There will be kits that will be provided for the kids, recognizing that social distancing, but this program specifically supports and enriches the academic content. We are opening this program to our rising first and through 8th grade students, and they are currently students who were already enrolled in the 21st Century program for the 1920 school year. And again, you can reference from that FLDOE document, page 108.
So all of this aligns with what
All
the
of this
DOE
aligns with
recommended.
DOE recommendations, yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Boston. So, with that being said, the area directors, myself, Mr. McAteer, we had already been planning a summer recovery or summer soft opening, and really we were looking at targeting our rising fourth graders and select rising fourth graders. So we were well on the way. Then new information came last week, new documentation, so we really wanted to respond to that. Had a great meeting last night with our instructional delivery task force, and thank you, Mrs. Thrower, she's on our team. And as a result of that, we have modified what we are prepared to offer this summer, really in response to the expectation that has been put forth in the document and the financial resources that will be provided to back and support that initiative. So what we are really prepared to look at beyond our 21st century is supporting all elementary, middle, and high schools. We're going to talk to you in what capacities and what grades in just a minute. Originally, we were looking at a 2-week early return, but the recommendation last night was that we extend that to 3 weeks. There is a minimum hourly requirement for supporting students that's been put forth by DOE, so we want to be in compliance with that. And we are looking at a 6-hour day, which originally we were looking at something a little bit shorter, but we have plenty to do in 6 hours, so no problem there. And really the purpose of this is we want to make sure that we've got summer programming that we can minimize the effects of the coronavirus and that we are getting our students back that did not participate in distance learning or have a significant academic need. And our primary funding source we're going to utilize is a part of the CARES Act, and we're now lovingly referring to it as GEAR funds, which is the Governor's Emergency Educational Relief Funds. They must be used by August 31st of this year, and they must only be used on summer recovery efforts. So that is exactly what we're going to be using it for. We are currently looking at welcoming on a very select basis. I don't want to imply today that we're welcoming back every student. We want to do this very targeted, and we want to do it at a reasonable scale so that we can practice some of the new practices that we want to put in place. So select rising kindergarten through 5th grade students. We've talked about those specific targets, those that were disconnected, those that have a need. We really want to focus in on language arts, math, and science, and we do not want to forget the social emotional learning. So we'll be working with Amanda Steckman and team. We have a program already in place at elementary called Sanford Harmony, and that will be important to utilize every day. On the secondary end, we want to make sure we're doing something with our rising 6th and rising 9th graders that fell into the bottom quartile. We want to make sure that we're welcoming them back to campus, not just for academic transition, but also for socialization and campus, so that they become acclimated to their new campus, and of course, getting some study skills in front of them. Food service will be an important part of this. We want to make sure that we're providing breakfast and lunch at all sites. We've had a very brief conversation with Ms. Johnson. We're engaging in conversation with her next week, and we would be providing grab-and-go lunches, but at each school site. Originally, it was going to maybe be more of a delivery model, but we think we can offer that at each site, and students will be eating in the classroom. What I am going to need your feedback on is transportation. So we've got 3 options, and I really would love your feedback and weigh in on what do you think would work best. There are limitations to each one, and certainly you would just be able to tell that there's costs associated with that. Option 1, if we really adhered to full social distancing on the bus, and we did 1 student per seat and skipped a row in between each seat, that would really limit the number of students that we could transport at one time. In talking with Ms. Rora, that would really look like, if you said, well, how many kids is that? That's about 9 to 11 kids on a full-size school bus. So cost-wise, and trying to get kids at school and get them going in school, even in a summer effort, that would take a whole lot of buses and a whole lot of drivers, but that is certainly an option. Option 2, we could look at, again, adhering to all social distancing on buses, but only providing transportation to our outlying schools, but we also thought if we chose that, that would also need to include Oakcrest and Evergreen. And then in-town schools would, not that they would not be invited and not that they couldn't come, but that transportation would be more provided from the parent. Again, I think we already know that that has some limitations and equity concerns, but we bring it to the table to discuss, and as we mentioned, they're an equity issue. Here is option 3. Option 3 is to still be very careful about what we're doing on the bus, but to put 2 students per seat, not 3 as we traditionally do, not skipping rows, recommending that students wear masks on the bus, recommending that our drivers wear masks, having hand sanitizer available on all buses. This would allow for maximum participation. It is much more affordable. Obviously, we can transport a larger number of students, and this would be great practice for a fall return, because we do have to think with the end in mind, which is, what is this going to look like when we return in August? And we've got some pages referenced there from the FLDOE article that came out.
So it aligns with what the DOE is recommending?
Yes, there are definitely, it talks very much about providing hand sanitizer, yes, so.
Where will all the masks come from for these kids?
So it would be our thought in talking with area directors and Mr. McAteer, and we've had Miss Boston, we've really been trying to brainstorm, and our thought would be, again, we don't know if we believe that we can on a daily basis be providing masks to students. So this would be something that if the student themselves or the parent feels strongly that they would like their child to wear a mask, either on the bus during the school day, that the parent would provide that. Again, that could be a cloth mask, that could be whatever is provided by the parent, but we certainly would encourage that if they have one, that they wear it.
And if they've got the bandanas and different, they're gonna be falling off, and the teachers are gonna be having to handle them to help them get them back on and everything, and then it's a whole nother thing, you know?
Yes.
How
I
would you
think the key word there is recommended, and then we, again, make that a parental option, and that they can have conversation. I know there are some limited opportunities this summer, some limited camps, and what I can already see is that that has been kind of the option, that it is an option, and if the parent or student chooses to do that, then that is certainly supported, that is fine. But we really would like you all to weigh in on where do you see, and we've had conversations with Ms. Rora, so she knows we're coming to talk about this today. What do you see as being a viable option for us when it centers around busing?
I'm fine with option number 3. I know Ms. Rohr is going to be sure that those buses are sanitized on a daily basis, cleaned well. The hand sanitizer, I think that we got to get these kids back in school. I think that has got to be our main objective. Be safe, but I think that if parents want them to wear a mask, then send them with a mask. But I truly believe that this is the best option, and I know those buses will be sanitized on a daily basis. So I'm fine with option number 3.
Okay?
I'm in agreement with number 3 as well, and I'm thinking about the procedure for hand sanitizer, which is important and relatively easy to do and non-invasive. And I'm wondering what the rules might be on a bus. I'm thinking about as the kids are stepping onto the bus, if a hand sanitizer pump could be mounted somehow where they would just go, psh, and then the bus driver wouldn't have to be, pumping it into their hands or anything, but that would become the expectation, and they would be practicing this over the summer, so then when fall rolls around, it just becomes the thing that you do, like looking both ways before you cross the street. Before you get on the bus, you just on.
That's a great idea.
I think there needs to be a procedure, though, because otherwise,
And Ms. Thor,
it'll help parents understand.
in one of the groups that we're working on, I'm in one of those groups, that was one of the considerations that we were talking about, having the pump, but then there was a safety issue as far as if the droppings from the hand sanitizers are on the steps and
They come
the
slipping.
kids slip off. But we are considering some type of hand sanitizing station or something on the bus. It needs to be. I'm looking at the FLDOE 54 and 58. Those recommendations talk about cloth masks. Are we telling parents they should have cloth masks, or what are we telling them? Because it does not speak about disposable. And I'm in agreement. I think option 3 is the best option, because there is no way we could back and forth all day long with 9 kids. You just need to make sure we're doing this safe as possible. We maybe need to get the little tiny hand sanitizer or something, have the parents doing that. But it talks about cloth masks.
So I think you bring up a good point, Reverend Cummings, and kind of the next slide will tag team right along with this. So see, these are some of the recommendations that we had kind of brainstormed and come up with, but we had full intention of coming back to that health safety task force, which it sounds like you may be a part of. And we really wanted to make sure and have that maybe be a topic of discussion, whether you're meeting afternoons or evenings, to make sure that we have been inclusive of everything. And that could also be a recommendation, because I do go back to what you've said. Whatever we start now in the summer, this is supposed to be practice for the fall. So I'd hate to start something and then change, unless we saw it wasn't working. Then I think that the change is needed. But you know, whatever it is, let's start out that way. So you can expect that, I'd already told Mr. Bennett, get ready. We're coming to your task force to talk about safety recommendations.
You know, and I agree the parents need to provide the masks. Those teachers have so much to do. I mean, and then to teach kids how to put masks on, there just comes a point where the parents just have to be responsible. And if they're wearing masks at home, they have them. If they're not at home, then they're not going to wear them. And it's not our job to just make sure their faces are covered, because then the teacher's going to be all up, you know, in their faces and everything.
There's a concern too, that if we purchase the masks, then we're saying this is the one you should use, and there's a
Well, we just,
liability there too, that the parent, it's a recommendation and the parent can make the
parent
best
needs to,
decision for their child.
definitely, and that's not something our teachers need to.
Well, and of course, again, just to finish this off, and I think that we will be coming to that Health and Safety Committee. We're really thinking, based upon some information that Mr. Ayers has given with typical space in a classroom, and thinking about social distancing, maximizing and capping at our numbers at 12 in a classroom for the summer, providing health information to parents, having health-related signs posted around the school, hand sanitizer, obviously, in classrooms and strategically around the school, making sure that we have a clinic set up, particularly if we have a child that's sick, making sure that we're daily cleaning and sanitizing rooms. I mean, all the things that we would commonly think of, but we do want to make sure that we don't need to add to this list. And we've got a little bit of time. I think everything we're doing this summer is on an accelerated path, but nonetheless, we can still make sure that we accommodate. When we met with our team last night, it was we do all things first with the idea that our students and our staff are safe, and those are the things we must keep in mind. So with that is our presentation.
I was just going to say, and these are general guidelines that are just really taking shape and form now as we're starting to meet in the different committees. And I think the parents will be reassured and be able to make their best choice about whether or not they want to put their kids on the bus, or put their kids on the bus by knowing what the procedures are going to be. And I think those will be defined more going forward.
Certainly, because it doesn't stop any parent from still
Taking their own kid.
self-transporting. They're not precluded from participating in the program because they want to self-transport. That's perfectly fine.
And there are some districts in the country that have just said, if your kid's going to ride the bus, they will have a mask on. And if you don't want your kid to wear a mask, then you transport. So, I mean, there are districts that are doing that in the country.
Are they
so
providing the mask, or are they having the moms do it?
They're having the parents do it, parents. So,
All right, so any questions for Ms. Boston or myself?
I'm just happy that it's happening.
Yes.
Yay.
I got one thing, please, and this is because I've been on this with the safety committee. Please, because this is so new, just give them some mask protocols that these kids are not wearing stuff that is inappropriately on their mask.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Thank you for saying that.
thank you.
And
All
these
right,
little
thank you so much.
Thank you.
don't have those masks up on their
Mr. Kelly's coming in next, and he has an update for
And choking each other.
well.
Yeah.
I can picture these masks. It's going to be a little boy's favorite plaything. Swinging it, hitting people with it. Oh.
Good afternoon, Chair Cummings and Board,
Hey, sir.
Kevin?
Deputy. Dr. Mayor, thanks for having me here today. I just listened to that presentation, so we're going from the youngest to the oldest of members of our community. Here to talk a little bit about Marion Technical College and the reopening there. But before I do that, I must say thank you to the board and superintendent for your support during this pandemic. Just to update you just for a second, out of 47 technical schools in Florida, Marion Technical College is one of the few that finished everything and graduated their students and got done.
Bravo.
And it was through y'all's support. There are at least 3 districts out there right now that haven't even come back to school yet from the shutdown in March. And in the college world, what that means with financial aid and tuitions and all that kind of stuff, I can't even imagine. So thank you for not causing me to go through all of those things. This is really just a heads up. We're all on some task force of reopening schools here and doing great jobs with that. But just a heads up, Marion Technical College starts classes, our first class starts July 13th. So we're about a month ahead of everybody else.
We're starting then too, yeah.
So I wanted you guys to know that, we have a plan, and I'm not going to go through this whole plan, y'all. Y'all can read this thing. There's a lot of pages to it. So I'm just going to brush through here. This first many pages I have to turn into the state, really, and has a lot of resources that we're using for making our decisions. About page 7, it starts getting into the planning that we've done. And really, it comes down to providing the safe school environment for our students, just as with K-12. Number one priority really is educating our staff and students of what the protocols and what the proper things to be doing. There are some slides in there that have some of the posters and things that we'll be putting around school. The second point is really some physical barriers, and we just talked about masking here for a second ago. We're recommending to students that they wear masks. They don't have to. When we get in close quarters, like we do with, we're hands-on school, so when we have some nursing situations where we're real close to each other, we're certainly going to ask that they wear masks during those things. Putting up a little plexiglass in some areas that, we have high volume, taking care of Sherry Lou at the front desk there to make sure she's safe. Our class capacities at MTC, we generally run about 15 students in a program, and our classrooms can handle those 15 students and social distance them even, so we're in pretty good shape with our distancing there and classroom capacities. We do have a couple programs that are much bigger, and we've removed them to some larger areas to teach in so that they are a little more spread out. Of course, I've already talked with Carrie Cook and talking about the sanitation of the school. We have classes until 10 o'clock at night, so working out a schedule so that we can get them clean for 8 o'clock in the morning, which requires a little scheduling change there. And of course, developing some plans for teachers and students that do get sick, or if they get sick, of what are we going to do with that. And that kind of flows into our instruction piece, which page 13 on your of the slideshow talks about how we are going to have instruction. We're certainly starting back with face-to-face, but we are a hands-on school, so we do. Let's see, I'll get you to 13. There we go. We learned a lot of things while we were on break here about how to teach and do it online. So some of those things we're going to keep doing, even though we are at face-to-face. We can give some students some of their instruction by going to an online platform so that they can do a lot of the work, as many college students do now, online and off campus, so we can limit the people on campus a little bit that way. A big part of instruction, though, at MTC is clinical, and that's where there might be, a red flag that goes up and goes, wait a minute, you're sending students to the hospitals and nursing homes, and the answer to that's yes, we are. We have agreements with all these agencies. We have contracts with them. They have contacted us to make us aware that they want us in the school or in their environment, in their nursing homes and hospitals. We basically are following the same protocols of any of their staff members. So they, if temperature checks and all the PPP that they have, we must comply to that, which is, as you were talking earlier, a little expense goes with that. We've already looking at our supply chain of how to get a lot more masks and a lot more gowns and all those kind of things so that we can do our clinicals.
When you talk about that too, Mr. Kelly, it's important to remind everybody, these are adults who are paying tuition, and this is a college program.
Right.
This isn't our high school.
Right. We're definitely adults here. So
Yeah.
they've made the decision
Right.
to come to school, and this is the profession that they are choosing to go into. So if they don't want to go in there now, I doubt they'll want to get a job and go in there later. So really just, I can open up to any questions that you might have. That's the brief overview. I think we're very prepared for it. Chancellor Mack has been incredible with us of meeting weekly and getting us on the right road. So I feel very comfortable with opening up.
And I see for your new, for the July new school year, you have 31 students in your nursing program.
We do. Our nursing program has taken off. We are actually, I hear a lot of comments about people wanting to take things at night, and nurses that are daytime, they have jobs, and they've asked me, is there any program that you can have where we can work and absolutely, that's what we're about. So in January, we're going to start a nighttime nursing program, and we had a nice orientation here not too long ago, at least 10 students that showed up initially, and I think we'll have a lot more to get into that. We're preparing for our first responders and nursing to take off a little bit. Enrollment's a little slow right now, as you can imagine. People getting back into it, and paying actually, is going to be a little more difficult. So we may initially see a little dip in August here, but I think in January, we're preparing for things to take off in the technical schools. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. Just again, glad students are getting back in classrooms.
Excellent. I went through this real fast. Excellent plan. One thing I didn't see. I don't see when the cafe opened up for wings.
We do have a plan to open the cafe. It's going to be a little more grab and go, but there'll be some good chicken wings there for you.
Okay. That's the wing spot there for.
I do have one other item, if I can briefly touch on. Several weeks ago, you guys signed a contract for us to have a testing center at CDL for us to have state testing there, which is really big for us because right now we teach the course, but we have to go to Crystal River or we have to go to Stark and able to test our students. So we've applied, and it's been a lengthy process. You guys signed the contract for us to be able to do that, and once that got back to DOT, then they said, well, now the two people who signed the contract, Mr. Cummings and Dr. Mayer here, you guys have to have a background check and all that. So there's a, so except for doing that, I checked with legal over here. They said, if you guys will have consensus of allowing me to sign that contract instead of Dr. Mayer, then it's on me. I've already done because they required me to do it too.
Why do you have to have a background check?
That's a great question, Miss Stacy, but
We all have them. I mean,
but
we all have-
and it has to be. And I told them, I said, well, our superintendent certainly has background
All
check,
of us have
but
them.
no, it has to be done in the last 6 months.
Oh.
So they have their rules, but I had to have one, and our instructor had to have one, and our program manager has had to have one. We've had to do all our license checks and all these things, but then they threw
They
these
do
two.
cost money too, don't they?
Absolutely. So if you guys are okay with me signing that, I'll be glad.
I'm
to sign it.
absolutely fine with that.
I don't have a problem with it because it's, as you know, Dr. Mayer's transitioning out. So what's going to happen in a couple of
Well,
weeks?
that was my question too, is like, well, if I get it done now, do I have to wait in a couple of weeks and do it again? And that's
Let's
going to
go
cost
ahead.
again.
Let's
And
go ahead.
You're the one that's closest to the
Yeah,
program.
let's go
You're the
ahead.
one.
We know you're signing it. We know you won't sign anything without coming to us, so I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You. All right.
Final update, I sent an email to you all today. Mr. Ayers is on his way in, where last night the governor signed an executive order, and in that executive order, there was a recommendation that public schools be closed on the primary day in August and then for general election. So that's something that the board is going to have to decide what you want to do, and Mr. Ayers just wants to give you some information, and then we'll seek your guidance, because that's coming up, and there's only one work session in July.
Why is it?
Correct,
why would
Ms.
the- why-
Lopez?
What's the
Okay,
rationale?
so y'all are gonna have to make a decision on what you want to do.
But why do they want us to do that?
Well, Mr. Ayers,
He's gonna give you all the minutia.
Good afternoon, Pastor Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayer, Ms. Green, Elena. I'm here to talk about, Dr. Mayer did forward to you all the executive order that I think it was last night the governor signed, basically having to do with the election, primary election in August and the general election in November, and basically saying that they're anticipating the largest turnout ever and they need to plan ahead, basically wanting to use schools as voting precincts and potentially using school teachers to get trained to man them. That being said, he is suggesting to school boards, and the chancellor sent out another email clarifying all that, that schools are closed I believe it's August 16th and November 3rd. August 18th and November 3rd, those days. If that happens, those are right now instructional work days. And if that happens, we have to adjust, and in his order, he directs school boards, adjust your calendars. We have a calendar committee that we formed to develop the 1920 calendar. So as soon as I got wind at it, I sat down, threw some stuff together, and I emailed everybody that was on the calendar committee. And I emailed a couple suggestions that came up with basically out of necessity, because my grandfather used to have a term, you can't get blood from a turnip. And there's not many, as Ms. Thrower can attest, we worked it out 3 days from Sunday to try to figure out how to get the best work out of this. So the suggestions that I have, and I will email this out to you, we can extend the school by 2 days. Currently, students leave on May 26th, which is a Wednesday. We would extend that to Friday. The teacher workday, instead of being the Friday, will be the Tuesday after Memorial Day. That is the cleanest, easiest, but it doesn't address instructional minutes, because it takes the 2 days of instructional time that kids are already behind from the COVID, takes those 2 days out in the beginning of the year and tacks them on at the end of the year.
Hate that.
The second option, we currently have a whole week off at Thanksgiving break. So that if we have to take those 2 days off for the election, that we use Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving break, which we used to do in this district, and then leave on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for Thanksgiving. Third option is we built in 2 weather days already that we batted around a lot, that we utilize those 2 weather days, call them election days instead, then tack on 2 weather days at the end of the year. That gives us instructional time during the year when we need it, but if we have a storm, we lose instructional time on that. The fourth and the less, I don't know if it would fly, would be to convert those 2 election days to early release days. If we did them early release days, that would allow staff and students off early to go vote and give them time if the polls are long, but it doesn't address the issue of if we have to use schools as polling places.
So have we talked to Wesley Wilcox about this?
It just came out, which
It
is
came
why I
out?
wanted him to talk.
I didn't call because I wanted to talk to you first.
Exactly what I just wrote.
So I think we need to
Through all
talk.
these gyrations.
Then there's the choice too of not.
Exactly,
closing.
that's
So
what I
it's-
was.
So I'd like a conversation with Wesley Wilcox to see if he foresees using our school sites as election sites. If he doesn't see using the sites, then I say we don't.
And we still are gonna have early voting we need to confirm
Yeah.
from him, and
And mail out voting and everything else. So if Wesley says he does not need our school sites, I really do not want to close school.
The concern that we have is we have a tight window. We only have, I believe, 1 work session in July to be able to present and with the board to get this noticed, voted on, approved if we're going to change it, to do that.
but these are recommendations, not mandates, right?
That's what the order was. It was the governor recommended, and you take
I
that
think
for
in
what
our
it's worth.
county that I would have a lot of questions before messing with the school calendar. We've had enough uncertainty as it is, and Wesley Wilcox is our expert. He's the supervisor of elections. He needs to weigh in, and I know he'll weigh in quickly.
I would suggest, I know y'all have a school board group, or
For elections.
And there hasn't been long
So
lines.
and that's why I wanted him to speak to you all today and ask,
Right.
sir, if you would call a special work session to discuss this.
Yes, can we do that?
Yeah, and maybe,
I think Beth's got a good idea. Let's talk to Wesley.
Well, can we have him come and
Yeah.
present?
That's gonna be a long meeting. If y'all know Wesley.
we'll tell him to be
Let's just get-
succinct. He can be succinct. I've heard him be
Is it
succinct.
necessary really to have a work session?
I don't think so. I think, why didn't somebody
I-
just
I
ask
would-
him?
I would-
Ask 'em.
Why don't someone just ask him?
I don't want you to make a snap decision right now.
Right.
We need to think about it, and think it through the
I'll
impact.
reach out to us.
Let's,
We
Well, and
need
it would be
some
good to, and then Mr. Ayers would have some time to gather from other districts what they're doing, and then,
So, Mr. Harris, let's me and you go have a conversation with Wes.
So here's the thing, though, I think we need to go ahead and schedule the work session that we can cancel if we need to cancel it, because we've got to advertise it. So we don't want to get caught not having something in place to have this discussion. I'd rather have to cancel it rather than, because I think, so let's go ahead and schedule a special work session. Get Wesley involved in this, see what he says, and then, and
Elena will have to work with us on advertising dates and times, but I mean, if it's an emergency session, can we, those are special, that's out of my realm right now, so.
can't we have a special session for this?
The next work session that we'll have will be July 16th. If we need to have one prior to that, we can have one. I'm thinking.
What is the deadline?
Thinking like the 5th or 6th.
There's no deadline in that. He just said, just do it and adjust your calendar.
Consider doing
But
it.
here's my concern, with us starting the early summer, and everybody emotional and reacting to all this, if y'all would just make a decision what you want to do, then he can change the
this-
calendar, folks can relax, we'll know what the calendar
And
is.
this impacts not just students and teachers,
Yes.
but IUPAT, everybody, because remember, it basically.
Families too.
Right.
Basically becomes
Right.
2 hurricane days that people aren't going to get paid, but then we pay them because they're expecting that check, but then when they make up, they don't get
July
paid.
9th.
So
Why
it's-
July 9th? Why can't we do July 2nd?
Everyone's off,
We're
that's,
closed, the
that's
district
what
is
July would.
closed the 2nd.
and I'm out of town. I know that doesn't matter, but
Well, does it have to be on a Thursday? We don't have a board meeting on the 7th. Why can't we do July 7th?
We could do the 7th at that morning.
Yeah,
If everybody's okay with
There's
that.
that.
Tuesday.
it's a Tuesday.
July 7th is the first school board meeting. So let's go ahead and schedule it for July. You guys any good with that? Ms. Stacy?
We have a school board
Yeah,
meeting.
and if we have to have a light discussion about it, we can have it at a board meeting. I mean, it can be, topics can be brought up at a board meeting.
Well, the problem is that we don't have, we only have one board meeting in July, correct?
28th.
Yeah, and it's not till the 28th, so
What
we
about the
need,
one- Don't we have one,
We have
What
one on
month
the
are we
23rd,
in?
but that's only to receive the tentative budget with Teresa. That's,
That's a 5-minute board.
so let's schedule July 7th, special work session. We can at least come to consensus at that, so that Mr. Ayers can move ahead. That, to me, makes the most sense.
9 o'clock, July 7th.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I was asking about the timeline because we also did reach out to our employees and to the families with the options. And the email that I got from you outlined 4 options, and I don't know if you got my response. Okay, I know, I sent it right before this, but would it be possible to quickly send out those 4 options plus another specify
The issue-
as a survey?
I mean, that's obviously your desire to do that. But the issue is, we're about to send out a bunch, we don't want survey fatigue, because we've already asked.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on,
People want input.
and but unfortunately, the more you put out there, the less response you get. And so we're approaching just.
Usually.
Yeah.
I don't think.
These are atypical times.
I don't want to think they're going to want to give up those 2 days in November at Thanksgiving. I think that some of them plan, they've kind of
On
gotten.
vacations and
Well, I can tell you right now, if you ask parents, what I'm going to predict what they're going to pick, and as a parent myself. But we've also got to think about other things that are impacted, and so.
Yeah, like the kids, because we definitely don't want to lose instructional days before testing.
Correct,
I mean, that's huge, coming off of this long
correct.
break.
So let's, July 7th.
I'd be just as happy not to do it at all, but, so I hope Wesley can reassure us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're not minding.
That's the last of my updates. Chair Cummings.
Thank you. We're going to ask for Mr. David Hurley for a school planning update. Did Mr. Ayers have another one?
Yeah, he's a little later.
Oh, we should have just did him while he was here. Okay.
Yeah.
What's actually next?
Good afternoon, all.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Chair Reverend Cummings. Start.
Thank you.
So I started with Chair Reverend Cummings, board members, Superintendent Mayor, Martin Lopez.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I have two handouts here that I just gave you. One has 5 items on it that I wanted to address as quickly as possible, and I have a couple of questions or requests for direction from you on that list. The second one that's stapled together is images relating to the first, actually, the second item on the list. So, this is annual planning update. I've got some information here that you've, to start off with, that you probably heard me speak about in some ways before. Item 1, it says historical enrollment trend. And this is a blurb, and I would just ask you, I'm going to touch on a couple bits of it, and then you can read it later if you're so inclined. But I prepared this blurb for upcoming budget document that Business Services is doing, and so I'll touch on a couple of high points here and then move on to item number 2. So for historical enrollment trends, over the 10-year period from school year 2009-10 to 19-20, the schools grew, or enrollment grew, by 1,608 students. So not really that much. The average, so mathematical average, is about 160, 161 students per year. And as you start, my whole point in doing this here is about how we're growing or not growing, and then we're just kind of, undulating along. We go up and down a little bit as we go along. And so over 10 years, not really growing that much. But we are still, I think, continuing to redistribute. Less students in the north, more in the south. Right. And this will filter into my next item in just a moment. So 2 significant demographic factors that go into this going on, as I may have mentioned before, is 1, we've got a consistent and proportionally low quantity of births. So births tend to be 3,200, 3,400 a year, like that. And then 2, overall county growth. So the county, not talking about enrollment, but the county itself continues to grow, but that's driven by the in-migration of largely retirees. I get these statistics from the Bureau of Economic and Business Research at University of Florida. And the natural increase was 0 as published. And so natural increase just meaning like if you just only considered the growth, the resident growth. Did you have enough births to cause a growth in the county? No. So we've got a zero for that. And the growth of the county was 100% attributable to net migration. So a comment here, specific data in the middle of the first paragraph. Births for the period had a yearly average of 3,400, and the death average was 4,800. So you can see deaths exceed births by 1,000, 1,300. So I'm going to jump down into the next paragraph and right into the middle of it and just restate the 161 students there. What I do is go on and just kind of go through an exercise of, when you have on average 161 students, you can kind of say half of those, 80 of them, 75, 80 of them are going to be in elementary. And then you got maybe 20% of them in middle school because you've only got 3 grades, and then the remainder is in high school and whatever our special schools are. So really, then, once you start taking those raw numbers and divvy them out to all the different schools that we have, you're talking about just a scatter, just a sprinkling. I mean, it's always conceivable that they go in big, some sizable groups to one school or another, but largely they just get kind of sprinkled out all over the county. So, there's just this kind of little fluctuation in the various schools in a big picture, in a generalized way like that. So I'll ask you to flip over, and last comment there on methodology. This is another, not an exact quote from the Bieber statistics, but I highlighted it. In a 67 county state, being known for a tourist destination and as a retiree haven, we are 50th in the population under 18. So that starts to point in the direction of what's going on with students and how many younger people we have. And we're 8th in population over 65. So
Really
paint-
big
that paints the
variance there.
Yeah, that paints the picture.
Hang out.
Yeah.
Is there any comments or questions? No? I'll just move on to item number 2. So, item number 2 is the Winding Oak site. This is a land swap, between Northwest 80th Avenue and Winding Oak.
Ever gonna finish?
It's done, so congratulations is in order. And it closed on, or wrapped up on May 22nd.
Fabulous.
So the board owns the property now. And that's a 20-acre site. This is where I was talking about the second handout with the images on it, relates to this. And I guess this is as good a time as any to call your attention to that. The first colorful page, this is the generalized plan that they have for the entirety of the farm. And if you look kind of smack in the middle of the page, it says parcel 6. And if you move upward and to the right from parcel 6, that gray line is a road, an interior road for the subdivision. It comes over further moving to the right, so I'm talking about in this area here. It's that corner that is the site that we traded for. And if you flip that page over, you'll see this black and white sheet is the survey of the property. And then the very last sheet, you can see is a color aerial image that shows, and gives you an idea of a feel for what's on the property. And what is on the property, it's any other land that we've purchased or the board has purchased or traded for previously in my tenure has been undeveloped land. So this has improvements, has a horse barn on it. I believe it's a 22 stall barn, 20 or 22 stall barn. I'm not sure I understand paddocks and pastures or the distinction between them, but I think there are some partial paddocks that still lie within the property that we purchased. And then the circular pens or training pens that are there. So we've got improvements on it. And the Cradle LLC, that is Mr. Melnick's corporation for the subdivision there at Winding Oaks, is asking for requesting to lease the property. They would like to use the barn, and they had some discrepancy. I don't know, Mr. Green, if you've seen the last of the emails coming in, but I've been trying to find out information about what the rental situation or lease situation is or that. And at first, we're finding out that there wasn't a lease, but now it seems that they're actually maybe even leasing stalls. I've seen from a bit of cursory research that stalls can be kind of lucrative. Their value in terms of whatever amenities go with them or that.
Especially with hits
So,
and everything going on.
I mentioned that, and I don't know if I need to go into any other details, but given that Cradle's interested in a lease on the property, in my tenure, the board hasn't leased property to any entity like this, whether it was a property that the board had already and somebody proposed like a cattle lease or grazing lease or that, or I think I would suggest.
So-
Cradle wants to lease it and then sublease it to Horseman?
Yes. And, and I say yes, but I'm very tentative about that because the details are not clear.
It isn't clear right now. They actually may already be in some of that, so,
How lucrative is it for us?
We would need to do some research on that, and so I'm thinking, of some sort of appraisal study would be lease comparisons is what
Yeah.
I've heard from appraisers so far. The other thing that when I first saw the draft of the lease, and I have a draft of the lease, but it was prior to the board closing on the property, so the parties and all that, it's kind of.
So this would be until we are ready to use the property.
Right.
you could structure it like that, yeah.
So, but there's a structure there, right?
Right,
Barn.
it's a barn.
A horse barn. How many stalls is it?
20 or maybe 22.
It's more set up for racehorses. Are there horses there now
I think there are.
in that barn?
I'm not sure, but I think there are, yes. And so we're in between in this kind of limbo. And so we did get some correspondence from Attorney Lennox at Greenspoon Martyr saying that the board is covered insurance-wise by a torts statute, but we do need to get out there post-haste and post signs was his recommendation that indicates that and makes it known on the site.
'Cause
And so,
Yeah, I would be wondering how long of a lease the folks that are in there now, how long their lease is and how long they've been there, and do they intend to stay? Or is this a new group that they're talking about putting in? Because it's a long way from World Equestrian Center, so it might not be as lucrative as we think.
Well, I'd also wonder if the insurance covers well enough that if there was a
Stabling, they have it.
challenge to the insurance, is it gonna make all of our insurance go up or affect our rates? Like, in other words, where are we now when they have an umbrella policy that protects us with ours? That would be something for the attorney.
There is, Florida, on the books, statute-wise, there's some really strong equine protection statutes,
If you're posted.
which requires the notice post. So I believe that's already in the works.
But those laws haven't really been challenged very well yet, last I heard. The posting, you're coming on your own.
I've been involved litigation with them, and
See,
they're,
I haven't had that problem. I haven't taught horseback riding lessons in like 10 years, 15 years. And at that time, when it was posted, it was, you're coming at your own peril or whatever. It had to be very specific and it had to be posted at every gate. And at that time, we were hoping it would work, but we didn't know. So you're finding that it is working?
I've been involved with litigation. I mean, the statute is very, very specific as to the posting of it. I'm sure we would need to
But it
get-
has been sound. It's like worked for people.
Yes,
Okay, 'cause
ma'am.
I posted my signs and I had them written up exactly like the statute, but I didn't know if they really were gonna work for me. So,
so I
So-
feel good that I'm sorry.
So there is someone in the building currently using it now?
I believe so. I think, I was out there maybe 10 days ago, just to look with a couple of colleagues, say,
And
this is the property,
If
and
there is, are they paying us for using it now?
definitely not, because we don't have anything.
Because we now own it.
Yes, ma'am.
So then I
that's like
think we need
squatters.
to first find out if it's occupied and then make sure that we get that part taken
We need
care
to
of
figure out a
before they
deal if
create
we're
it.
gonna have a deal.
So, Ms. Green, what are your suggestions on this?
I mean, I think from the email exchange, Mr. Hurley and Mr. Lennox really, I mean, have it going down the right track. It's just kind of peeling back the layers of the onion. We need to get the signs posted. We need to figure out who is on the property and then what what the notice requirements are. I think under Florida law, we can give them 30 days to kind of vacate once it's our property anyways. I don't disagree that investigating whether or not it would be something y'all would be interested in leasing this isn't a bad thing to explore, but that's really,
Exactly.
But I think the first step is find out who's there, get the notices posted, and
Because we have no immediate plans for that property. correct? We need to figure out who's there and if they want to do something. Let's
Yeah.
explore that option.
Yeah, I mean, because, if we're leasing, those funds could go directly
Right.
towards the school that we're gonna build
Right.
at some point. I mean, so, I think we need to think about that.
Yes.
Because we all know we're gonna have some shortfalls, and the more revenue we can bring in to help with those shortfalls, the better off we're gonna be.
but to the equine posting, it covers equine accidents. But like on the property, if there's a hole or there's something negligent on our part, that someone could fall in a hole, I ain't
they
gonna,
have to be there for a lawful purpose.
yeah.
And if we haven't invited them there to do their equine activity, then they're not properly on the property,
I mean, if we go into a lease, I'd hate to see our insurance, if someone does have an incident or something, and I don't know, like, how that would affect our insurance rates as a whole.
I don't disagree with that.
that it would be concerning, are we gonna, like, if we did have if the sky did fall, if the unicorns did strike, you never know, is it gonna make our insurance on a lot of our properties increase a certain amount because we had a suit? And I think those things that would cost us more money than we're getting from the lease.
Yeah, we need to find out what they've been paying and if the risk, doesn't outweigh the benefit.
I mean, they maybe have super great insurance that covers their operation and everything, but I think that's something that insurance would be the main, making sure everybody's covered.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask for a little direction. I think I know, it sounds like what you're saying, if I could get some sort of a consensus to be sure that I'm going along the right track. I've already spoken with Lori Lively and sent her information that I had, and we're asking for a review by the insurance consultant of the lease as it was proposed, the draft lease, the amounts that are in it,
Okay.
Individual event coverage and collectively. The other thing I thought of was, because of doing a little cursory research, it seemed like there's some revenue that could be had from it, especially the more years that go by. So I've also been looking into that, and as I said, if I could get some direction also on should I pursue a lease study, comparable lease study, that would be, perhaps $1,800, or I don't know, I would think not more than $3,000, something like a survey. I'm not a survey, but an appraisal, so somewhere in there.
I don't know. I don't know, for 20 horse barns, I don't know if we're going to be spending a whole bunch of money. I'd find out what they want to lease it for. I think there's people in the area that would know without spending $3,000, like, what it's
Because there's
worth.
not a barn apartment attached to it or part of it or a house or anything, right?
I say no, I've walked through it once before, but.
Some of those barns have upstairs.
Upstairs
Right.
apartments.
Barn apartments, yeah.
There's not an upstairs there, but I'm just saying,
Or
maybe
on
there's
the
not.
end or something, yeah.
And also, it's been managed in part of the farm, so the home is on the farm, and there's, any number of worker houses there.
Right,
so-
right. But not one as part of that
I would
property.
say, I trust you to go in there and just you know what we need to know. I trust you to dissect it for us and
Okay.
see what you
Bring the
think.
information.
And bring the information back.
I
Yeah.
would like to know what they're paying now.
Yes.
Who they are.
And who they are.
Yeah, and who they are.
Who are they?
Who are you that's
Yeah,
on
so
our
all of the
property?
above. Find out all the above, David.
Yeah, because technically, we've owned it since the 22nd of May.
Yeah.
And that's almost 30 days. We haven't gotten anything out of them. They've been there for free, so we need to find out what's going on.
It's a great way to start a relationship backwards.
You got your direction, Mr. Ali?
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you on that.
Yeah.
So then now I'll move next to items real estate. I know that when it comes to real estate and people being interested in more real estate, there's not much money around now. And it becomes a matter of what it would be used for. But I've received a call from people that own the White House to the east of 8th Street Elementary there on the corner. There's a
That
White House and a
two-story
duplex,
White
right by the car line there.
Yes.
And they are asking $350,000 for that. I just told them, well, at the time, I explained the
We don't
process
need
and the
to.
statute and all. So I said, I'll go eventually to the board. I told them, it wasn't gonna be for a month or so when I talked to them, but I said, I will bring it to the board and get an answer for you and come back. So,
Thank you.
okay.
We don't have any use for that piece of property.
No.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
thought it
we
was,
have a whole bunch of it right behind it the other way.
Yeah. That we
We're
may
trying
want
to
to get rid of.
sell.
Yeah. Okay.
all right, and then now item number 4 is Anthony Elementary. There's a little store out front there on Old Jacks Road, and it has been for sale from time to time, They have also contacted me probably a month or so ago, and they are asking $70,000 for that store. Just
Right across the street.
Where the
It's
car
store in
line is,
the-
right next to the
And the
school.
sub,
It's right, no,
Place.
it's right on
It's across from the subplace.
it juts into our property. It's right there, right in front of the school.
Yeah.
oh, wow.
How
And
big a
so-
piece is it?
It's pretty small, it's maybe a quarter of an acre. The thing is that, you know, I can see in the 8th Street situation, it's across the street and whatnot, even though we have a parking lot like that. But here, it could afford us some opportunity to be more flexible with the site. There's, you know, we are, kind of have the handcuffs on when it comes to loading up on,
Yeah.
on portables and trying to expand that school or what. So, and I also think, you know, 70,000, I mean, it's not peanuts, but it's not a whole lot of money.
For a quarter acre. What's on it? Just the store?
Just the store, and I don't know that there's any real value to us in the store, unless we were to, you know, remodel it, something like that for some use or another, if it could be a clinic, instead of the,
Oh.
Isolation.
Oh.
yeah, so.
I think that one may be worth going ahead and doing a little more investigation on.
Because they're asking 70, right? So that
Right.
doesn't mean that they,
And as I said,
It's right there.
right there, yeah.
Pretty much attached.
And Carline is awkward
yes.
Because
and
of
has
that,
been
yeah.
forever,
So
yeah.
to be able to control that or have that as part of the site.
Yeah, and to control the traffic on that and everything.
At whatever point in time later.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
Please explore that one.
Okay, and I'll bring that back to you. Just to, you know, in both instances, both of these cases, I explained to the people the statutory requirements and how we do appraisals, and that, you know, if the board would, if the asking price continued to be higher than the appraised value, that it would need a supermajority vote from the, so I just always tell people that. So. All right, then the last thing I have, number 5, is the educational plant survey is a document that's related to our work plan. Every year you see the work plan. The educational plant survey is only once every 5 years. But the significance of the educational plant survey is that anything that goes into the work plan needs a recommendation that has to have been incorporated in the educational plant survey. So, you know, if you want to add if you need to add an extra clinic, or you want to add a wing or something like that, there needs to be kind of a finding in the educational plant survey, and then with that recommendation, then it carries over and it can be in the work plan. Specifically, an example I'm thinking of is, you know, let's say you purchase the property. I don't know how, you purchased the small store. I don't know how that would apply, but would you need to get a recommendation in the ed plant survey, you know, to convert that into something or another? Because, and the link there for the recommendations and the plant survey is that you're spending taxpayer dollars on it. And then you, even if you're building, or particularly if you're building a new school, you're using X number of taxpayer dollars to create such and such. And if you change your mind and you want to change the use of it or something or another, that's, you know, something that needs to go through a process to ensure that the dollars were still used reasonably for their or related intended purpose. So I just want, you know, we have.
When do you have to do the survey?
Has a year. So we're starting now, but it's a matter of inventorying all of the schools. You know, this is another thing that where if we had, like in years past, we converted some classrooms to hardwired computer labs when testing.
Right.
You know, there was a great demand for testing, and so some of those we've flopped back. Others maybe now we might not need computer labs, so you would get a recommendation or put a recommendation in the educational plant survey to remodel the classroom and change it into a regular classroom, that sort of thing. And so then that could go ahead, and whatever costs associated with it be accounted for later. And I'm just thinking of, you know, at a place like Anthony, and this is an example, we have Long Island, which is 3 or 4 classrooms that faces the old post office on the south side of the campus there. That building I don't think is in the greatest condition, but you know, it would be an opportunity, I think, if we did, for example, put a recommendation in the ed plant survey, demolish or totally remodel that building. It's got capacity in it. Maybe it would be beneficial to, you know, depending on what we find, demolish the building and put portables in there, you know, that we could move them from one side of the campus or the other. It's an opportunity to add some capacity to the school, and maybe reconfigure it. But that all begs doing a little bit of master planning for that sort of thing. But I just give you that as an example.
So will you come back to us with those types of recommendations for the plan? Because I certainly can't sit here and say, yeah, let's stick that in.
Well,
That's not my
we will-
expertise.
Yeah, we're going to go through, so largely we're going to go through school by school.
Okay.
And evaluate those kind of things, look for changes. Another thing that's currently in our present ed plan survey is covered play areas. And so that's just one example of the kind of thing that gets recommended in an ed plan survey and later on shows up in the work plan, and if there's funding available, then we'll get one. So.
Okay.
So we'll do that and bring it
Yeah.
all back to you.
Yeah, those computer labs really have become outdated by and large because they have computers in their classrooms, and I know that's true at Oakcrest. There's a nice big room and it's a computer lab right
And I
now.
remember instances at Hillcrest too, where
Yeah,
trying to work the space, the capacity of it is mismatched with the number of students.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
All very
Hurley.
much.
Any public comments?
I'm looking forward to hearing about her.
There being none. Item 8: Academy Charter Application, Mr. Ayers.
Welcome back. Mr. Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor, Ms. Green, Elena. I'm here today to present the initial contract for the Ina A. Colon Academy Charter School. Their charter application was approved, and now we have a charter contract. The process started by sending the initial, which is the state model form contract, the state mandates that we use, and that's our starting point. And then we go back and forth with if they want to add some things or we want to add some things, and we basically negotiate. The contract that you have in front of you has been cleared by not only the charter school group, but also the Marion County School Board, our departments, our finance department, everybody's looked at it. I sent it to legal yesterday, and I believe Ms. Green, I don't know if we have the official word, but I think legal's okay with everything that's in our contract. There's a couple things that I want to point out. I did email you the contract, and you have the physical copy in your thing. If you turn to page 3 of your contract,
15 years.
on page 3 at the top, I'm highlighting, is the charter group is asking for an initial 15-year contract. The standard initial contract is a 5-year contract, but statute does provide the ability to ask for a 15-year contract by statute. And basically it says that if a nonprofit is making a substantial investment, that they can ask for a 15-year contract to facilitate that investment. They are building a school. I did send you renderings of the school in that email, and we do have public comment after this to address that as well. So that is a board decision. And so it's a 5 or 15, they're asking for a 15-year contract. Also understand that annually a charter school is reviewed, and we have the ability to terminate the contract if financial emergency or academic or things like that. So, but it does set a precedent. So I just want you to be aware of that. The next thing, if you turn to page 11, they have the option of following our pupil progression plan or not, and they are choosing to follow our student progression plan. And I wanted to point that out to you. Again, if you'll turn to page 12, initially, the school will not participate in our mental health plan. What that means is that that school will develop their own mental health plan, and then they'll be able to get their allocation of the funds. As a district that we receive, they'll receive their allocation share of that. And so that's their ability. They do have that, and that can change annually based upon their decision. If you'll go to page 18, one thing that they added that's not part of the initial contract is that as the LEA, which the sponsor acts as the local education authority basically for them, that we will also conduct reevaluations. That's not part of the contract, but one thing that we talked about them is that we want to also agree that a reevaluation is necessary, and they agreed to that. So basically, in the contract here, Dr. Alves has looked at that, and she agrees with this in the contract, because A, it's the right thing to do for kids. Number 21, on page 21, they put in here, which is not part of the original contract, but if you'll remember, the legislature did pass a law that if we pass a sales tax, like the referendum dollars, that charter schools will get a share of that. So anything new that the school board passes, charter schools will get a share, and that's
The
law now.
legislature added that?
Legislature added that. And so they put it in the contract. So whether it's in it or not, they would get it, but they put it in here, which is allowed. And so I just wanted to point that out there. So as you,
So when the referendum comes back in 2 years?
this is if it's a re-upping of a current situation, no. But if it's a new one, anything new, because like when this one re-upped, they didn't get a share because it's
A continuation.
If it's sunsetted and there was
Once
a
it's done and it's a new one,
lapse.
correct.
Yeah, it's, if it sunsets and there's a lapse and we
Then they
go
would.
back, then
Yeah,
they
then-
would.
right.
But as long as it's a continuation, no, they don't.
Right. The next is on page 31, which is transportation, which is the allocation of reasonable distance, which means, and when you look at an auditor, and I went with Becky Rora on this to go, it's between 2 to 4 miles. So they will work out transportation for any student that resides within 2 to 4 miles. Transportation is not provided within 2 miles, but between 2 to 4 miles it is. But anything over 4 miles, they're not required to negotiate transportation, but a lot of times they do anyway. But that's what we had to put in the contract, what reasonable distance is, and that survives the audit, the language that's in there. And then the last thing
36.
that's on page 36 is that they're registering as a private employer, which means they will not participate in the state retirement system. And again, they can, at a later date, amend that to go back if they wish to choose to participate in that. So what you have here is the contract. It has cleared the Marion County school system, and it's now up to the board to vote. It is on the agenda for public hearing at the July 28th board meeting to be voted upon. And like I said, the only contentious part, or the thing is, there is the 5 or the 15 year. And that's between the board to make that decision. Do you have any questions for me on the contract?
What type of precedence does this really set, other than having done it before? Because each one will be evaluated on its own merits anyway, and we have a year, it's a yearly.
It sets a precedent. Yes, they are evaluated. It's harder to close a contract or a charter school if they have a current contract than it is to not renew a contract. So it can be done. It's just the level of paperwork and the level of proof or whatever is more involved if they have a current contract. To reevaluate, to renew a contract, they have to submit a whole new application, just like Marion Charter did this year and then McIntosh does next year. They have to resubmit a new application and stuff like that. They wouldn't have to do that for 15 years versus the 5.
And the difference is, in my opinion, with this versus the other charters that we've had, is the investment that the nonprofit is putting in.
Building the school.
Building
and
the
having it be part of a
school.
neighbor- They're building a neighborhood.
Building the school, they've got the natatoriums, they've got, so this charter is very different right off of the beginning than any we've ever had because of the investment.
I agree.
So,
I do know we have 2 public speakers that want to speak to this.
okay.
Okay.
I would, a 15-year contract for me for this type of organization, I would have absolutely no problem with because of the financial investment that they are making.
I'm going to remain neutral in this because it is a board decision, but I can tell you that this charter group has been very cooperative, very friendly, very committed to the community, very committed to the students, and wants to be, from the very beginning, a partner. with
Yeah.
us,
And knowledgeable.
and very knowledgeable,
Knowledgeable.
very knowledgeable.
They come to us in a way that nobody else has before.
Okay.
And I do know.
There's time, though, for everybody to ponder.
Oh, yeah, there's time. Like I said, this isn't, I know we won't meet again as a group, but obviously individually, if you want to reach out to me individually, I can answer any questions that you may have on the contract or what's the meaning of it. Like I said, I do know we do have 2 public speakers.
Okay, we'll have public comment now.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Robert Colon.
And Ken's here too. I think he's going to talk too.
Good afternoon. Do I typically give your address and all that when you?
Name and address.
Okay, Robert Colon, 5642 Southwest 80th Place, Ocala, Florida. I want to thank all of you for welcoming us here today, Board, Superintendent Meyer. It is truly an honor to be here. And I just say this is a very emotional day for me personally, because it's an opportunity to stand and anything that I can do in honor of my Aunt Ina Colon is really a blessing to me. And to have the opportunity to say that anyone who knew Ina would have loved her. She was smart, she was tough, she was extremely generous and caring, and what better legacy for an amazing woman than to have a school dedicated to helping all children of all backgrounds excel and succeed. And that's really why we're here today, and that's why we have been pushing for this school. The Ina A. Colon Academy will be an inclusive school that will focus on project-based learning and social-emotional learning. And now more than ever, that social-emotional learning component is so vital. It is important that children learn to understand how to communicate with each other and to talk to each other civilly and get along. And I know that we see a lot of that struggle today, and it's something that really we want our school to be about, as a place where all kids can come together, can grow together, to learn together, and be a strong unit that they can help make a better society and a better community. As a school, we are going to be committed to providing all of the resources that are necessary for our teachers and our students. And as a working board, and working with the school board and working with their school staff, our goal is to be a learning institution that makes everyone in Marion County proud, especially our students. We have a strong volunteer governing board that has deep community ties. Our collective experience is diverse, whether it's in medicine, in construction, in law, in education. And these have been proven to be effective ways of running and being a governing board for a school. You may know some of these people, and you can see the board list yourself, but I can tell you that this board is committed to the long-term success of this academy. I'd like to thank Stephen Ayers and all of the district staff for all they've done, and Superintendent Mayor for all your work. I was talking to Christy Noe yesterday, and she was just so impressed with all of the hard work and all of the efficiency and coordination that the school board has done. And thank you for that collaboration that you've done. On a personal note, as a parent, and really having nothing to do with the board, the last 3 months have been very difficult for all of us. And as a parent, I've watched on YouTube how your extraordinary leadership has really taken us through these moments and these weeks and days. And I wanted to take that side sec just to say thank you, because it's important that you guys have a lot to face in the next couple of weeks, and we've been through a lot, but you've made sure the children got fed, you made sure they had computers, you made sure that they had internet, and that's all so important. And we don't want to lose that chance. So thank you for that, and we look forward to working with the board and with the school system as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have another one?
Mr. Colon, please.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
No.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to address you today and speak to the Ina A. Colon Academy and the Foundation's commitment to provide a charter school option to all students in Marion County. The Colin Family Charitable Trust is committed to providing a charter school option for all students in the county. We are investing financial resources to ensure the school will be successful, not just in buildings, but in our programs as well. That's why we asked for a 15-year commitment. These are really strange times. I think Robert Colin spoke eloquently about the leadership that this administration and this board has shown in this county. I truly believe it's exemplary, and I hope other counties learn from it as well. It's been really an amazing thing to watch unfold. Our vision at the foundation is for the Ina A. Colin Academy to educate the hearts and minds of students and their families in an environment where everybody belongs and works together. The path to realizing that vision is our mission, to cultivate passionate learners in an inclusive community in which individuality and diversity are valued and students develop understanding and empathy for others through collaborative and active learning. In keeping with our vision and mission, Ina A. Colin Academy's motto is sharp minds and kind hearts. You have renderings that have been circulated. That's just the facade of the school. There's a lot of work that's gone into it. We're past the 50% design point. The project, phase 1, is about 46,000 square feet, just a hair less than that. That's a really big financial undertaking, as you know what you spend on infrastructure. But, you know, the current pandemic has provided ample design challenges to us. I believe we are aligned with the state guidelines in that regard to support both educational and administrative staff as well as students. So I want to thank Superintendent Dr. Mayer, the entire school board, as well as the administrative staff for their objective and thorough review of this application. Thank you for the time today. I look forward to collaborating with the school board in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colin.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Dr. Kyra Shafty. Any other public comment? That was it?
That's it.
Dr. Kyra Shafty, teacher certification endorsements.
Good afternoon, Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Thrower, board members, Ms. Martinez Lopez, Dr. Mayer, and Attorney Green. I'm here today to speak with you about the renewal of 2 of our add-on programs that we have submitted to the Florida Department of Education, and it is autism spectrum disorder and gifted. So currently we had up to the close of the school year 5 add-on programs: athletic coaching, ESOL, reading, and then we were due to expire with our ASD endorsement and our gifted endorsement. And when we talk about endorsements, they are not in place of the teacher certificate. They call them riders to the certificate or complements to the certificate. So there is tremendous value, we believe, in renewing these, because when you look at our current numbers, we currently have 671 students with ASD and 2,461 students identified as gifted. So offering these endorsements at no cost to our teachers really leverages the human management piece of, we can use this as a recruitment initiative when we go to our colleges and universities, that this is something we offer that is potentially unique to Marion County, and then we can extend professional learning in the district to our teachers who currently work with these students. So we view it as really a win-win for the human capital piece. In order to seek continued approval, we had to submit a program narrative, a letter from Dr. Mayer saying that she approves our submission, and we also had to include a summative 5-year data from the validity period of 2015 to 2020 for the Florida Department of Education to review. And in doing that, the narrative was quite lengthy. I just gave you a screenshot of the table of contents for the ASD narrative, and for gifted, we had a great team working. Miss Danielle Chauncey reviewed it back and forth and worked with Miss Schottner for ASD and Miss Prieto for gifted. And we were proactive in realigning our template to the state's high-quality template. So you'll see that is the bulk of the components to be sure we're in alignment. We also did that because we are expecting the state to release a new template for professional learning, and we're trying to jump in front of that so we are on top of it and it does not change our way of work. The anticipated release date for that is July. So I just come before you today to share that overview and allow you to ask any questions, because now, in between scheduling my time for the work session and today, we received our first approval letter for gifted, and we are waiting for the ASD approval letter. So once that letter is in hand, I'll put it on the board agenda for consent. You'll see the entire package that was submitted, and then you'll also see items for consent regarding the components. Once we amend a component or update it, we'll submit that to you again for review. So I wanted to come before you and just ask if you had any questions that I could clarify before you see this package of documents on the consent agenda.
I have one question. How many of our teachers that are teaching in these two areas are certified?
I will have to check on that for you.
I would just be curious how many, have already received this, and then how often do they have to re-up it?
5 years, right?
Is it 5 years?
Every
'Cause
5 years.
okay.
I can tell you, I did pull that for ASD, we had 32 teachers complete all 4 courses. So
Okay.
there are, in the validity period that we have, and when we talk about courses, we have trainings, which are an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. These courses for ASD are about 240 hours, and gifted is 300 hours of coursework. So it is a massive time commitment on their part, but when they see it through, the expertise that they have is so tremendous. So
So when they recertify, do they have to have as many hours, or is that for the first certification?
No, ma'am. So for my ESOL, I completed that as part of my College of Ed. I do have to have a certain number of hours, but it's nowhere near the 300 that I needed to get it on my certificate.
Good. I think it's great. I believe that the certifications are great.
Absolutely. So you will see this on, once I do have your approval, or if you have any additional questions, I will move forward with putting it the next time we meet, which seems so far away, but July 28th.
And I believe every teacher at Hillcrest, for example, that teaches ASD is ASD endorsed or has to become endorsed after their first year, within their first year. It's just something that if you're going to be a teacher of students with those level of needs, it's very helpful, almost a lifesaver, I'd say. My other question is that isn't reading endorsement a requirement now by the Florida Department of Education? Don't teachers have to be reading endorsed?
Specific teachers do, depending on the students that are rostered to them and the degree in which they deliver intervention. So
Yes, I remember there was a lot about that a couple of years ago, so.
that's a very complicated answer to your question, but it's not a blanket statement that all teachers have to have that.
Okay, and there is no current requirement right now to be endorsed in ASD or gifted? It's more a really good thing to have, and that's why we want to offer it? Okay,
And for in-field, it would be correct.
to be in field, okay, all right. That's great that we're doing it.
Yeah, and knowing our population continues to grow with
Yes.
students with autism. So-
Yeah, 600.
And free. I mean, it's such high quality and no cost to our teachers. I think that's amazing.
It is. Great stuff.
Thank you, Ms. Shafter. Ms. Stacy, you have any?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shafter.
Very proud of you. And she just got her doctorate, too.
Oh, congratulations.
Dr. Shafty.
Any public comment on that one? All right, there have been no public comment. Concerns. Elena?
I do, I have a few. Just a reminder, please, when you are completed with your caps and gowns, please return them to us with the bags so that we can go ahead and send them back promptly. Also, I had sent out an email regarding the facilities and portable report of how you would like it received. I got response from Ms. Thrower, Mr. Cummings, and Ms. King. So, Ms. Stacy, I need to know if you want it electronically or in a big 3-inch binder. It's a pretty lengthy.
Electronically.
Electronically, Ms. McCall? Electronically, okay.
Sorry, I didn't reply.
Nope, that's fine. And the other two things are just reminders. The special board meeting on July 23rd is at 11. That is to receive the tentative budget from Ms. Teresa Boston Ellis. And the one on the 28th, we have the first one at 5:15, which is to adopt the tentative budget, and then we will proceed with the regular board meeting at 5:30. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Elena.
Thank you.
Attorney Green?
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Mayor?
Nothing today, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. McCall?
I really have nothing today. Thank you.
Stacy?
Nothing.
Ms. Thorough?
Nothing today, it's unanimous.
It is unanimous. Meeting is adjourned at 3:36 PM.
Great job, Chairman.